Florida State did everything they were supposed to do this season. Came in as a preseason top 10 team. They beat a then top 5 ranked LSU team, dominating them on a neutral field in week 1. They then won out in the regular season, finishing 12-0, and would make it to the ACC championship game, in which they won their first ever ACC title since the year of 2014, beating Louisville 16-6. Not to mention, they won the conference championship game with their third string true freshman quarterback. In the week prior, they beat the Florida Gators in the Swamp with their second string quarterback the week prior. You would think, being a 13-0 team, they would make it to the college football playoff for sure, especially winning their conference, a Power 5 conference at that. However, when Selection Sunday came, that was not the case at all, as Florida State would end up being the 5th team out of the college football playoff, behind Michigan at number 1, Washington at 2, Texas at 3, and Alabama at 4. Notably being Texas and Alabama, who both have losses this season. And shocking many college football fans, and especially the Florida State football team, Florida State seemingly had their playoff hopes shattered that Selection Sunday, and in many people's eyes, it's because the star quarterback of the team, Jordan Travis, went down with injury, and the college football playoff may have viewed them as a liability going against the other teams that were in contention, despite being undefeated. In totality, Florida State's season is one that should be remembered for their successes. They ended up going 13-0. This is their first undefeated regular season since the 2014 college football season, in which they won the ACC title. And they have not had a year in which they've had 10-plus win seasons since the 2015 and 2016 seasons with Jimbo Fisher. And if you really take a look at their program, kind of since 2018, really even 2017, they haven't been the most successful team, especially in the Willie Taggart era and transitioning those first couple of years in the Mike Norvell era. But this year, it was supposed to be special, and it was. They ended up finishing undefeated regular season, and they won the conference. But this is a team, in my opinion, that should have been in the college football playoff. They did everything they were supposed to. Did they have as tough of a strength of schedule as Alabama or as Texas technically? No, they have not. But they did what they were supposed to. You win your conference, you have a good chance of going to the college football playoff. If you go undefeated and win your conference, especially a said Power 5 conference, you have almost a 100% chance of going to the college football playoff. Previous years, that would have been a 100% chance. But now that Florida State didn't make it, it's now just an almost 100% chance. This program in Florida State, they've been in a rebuild. They've had to build it up from the ground up from that Willie Taggart era, starting all the way in 2018, in which he didn't have a single winning season under him, and transitioning to the first rough couple of years of Mike Norvell, where some thought he could seriously be on the hot seat. And in 2022, they had their first 10-win season since 2016. This year, made it to their first ACC championship game and winning it since 2014. Yet, they did everything they were supposed to. They had their most hype going into a year since 2017, and they met all their expectations they had upon them. You could even say they exceeded all their expectations. They were the favorite in the beginning to win their conference, but AP-wise preseason, they were number 8, and they made it all the way to number 3 in the AP poll and number 4 in the college football poll, as in their height of their rankings. They did what they were supposed to. They went undefeated. Like I said, they had a good year. That defense is great. It's 6th in the nation for scoring defense. That can compete with any team out there. It doesn't matter if the opposing team has a great offense or not. And on the opposite side of the ball, talking about Florida State's offense, they averaged 37 points a game, which ranks 13th in the nation. And I understand Jordan Travis, he ended up getting injured early on versus North Alabama, which affects many people's perception of the current team, of course. When you really take a look at it, Florida, the offense didn't really play bad. Was it a great game? No, but it was the first career start of that second-string backup quarterback, and he was serviceable. You probably would have expected him to have a potential bigger game or a more cohesive game versus Louisville in the ACC title game. But he was out with a concussion, so they had to start their third-string true freshman quarterback who has a lot of potential. But that's not a favorable situation for him to be in, and I don't think you should be judging Florida State solely off that ACC title game because they started their third-string true freshman quarterback who would not be starting in the college football playoff. And I'm not trying to take away from Alabama or Texas, because if you want me to be honest, Alabama and Texas, they both have a shot to make it to the national title game this year, and we could potentially see a rematch between the two teams, as both teams are playing some of their best football right now. Ever since Alabama lost early on to Texas earlier in the season, they've looked like a really good team, outside of that weird South Florida game that they had, that they started Tyler Buckner in and didn't play Jalen Milroe. They've looked like a really good team on both sides of the ball, and they just beat the college football playoffs, the number one team in Georgia, who just came off 2 back-to-back national titles. And you can't take anything away from Texas, who has also looked like a really good team outside of their one loss with Oklahoma, in which they didn't even really play bad against. Oklahoma just played really good, and Texas didn't play bad, but Oklahoma also played better than them that day. But they also just came off a conference title game in which they won, and it wasn't even close. The game versus Oklahoma State didn't feel close even when it was 14-7. I can also understand the argument that people say about how the college football playoff doesn't want a repeat of last year in which they had a 65-7 national title game between Georgia and TCU. But I feel like something people forget about that is that that's the national title game. Yeah, TCU, they got whooped, they got outplayed. They lost in every facet of that game that night. But they still won their first round, and they were a team that some people thought shouldn't have made the playoffs, and even then, they won their first round game versus Michigan. And you can't say they should have lost to Michigan when they outplayed them. And of course, I'm not going to say the decision to decide who would be the final 2 teams in the college football playoff outside of Washington and Michigan was going to be easy. It was going to be hard because how could you say no to an undefeated team that won their conference in Florida State? But how could you also say no to Alabama, who just beat your number 1 team in Georgia, who was the back-to-back national title winner? And even then, how could you leave out Texas, who also beat Alabama earlier in the year and won their conference as well? But in my opinion, Florida State, they shouldn't have been left out. If you go 13-0 and win your conference, you need to be in. In my opinion, it doesn't matter if their starting quarterback got injured or not. If you're going to base it off one game, the conference championship game in which they played against Louisville, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when that quarterback that started that game likely would not be playing in the college football playoff unless the second-string quarterback got injured again. It really sucks that Florida State season, although it is technically not over because they're going to play Georgia in the Orange Bowl, but it's coming to an end, and a lot of players' hopes and the team's hopes of going to the college football playoff ended even though they had nothing they could control. They went undefeated and did everything they were supposed to. It's just ultimately they were selected not to go to the playoff. And my final takeaway of this all is that next year and the years beyond this, you're not going to have this problem anymore. With a 12-team playoff, you're not going to have that team that is snubbed. It's, in my opinion, if you're that last team out of the college football playoff, there's maybe 1 to 2 teams you can argue that you deserve the spot over. But even then, can you really complain that much if you don't make it in a 12-team setting as a potential 9-3 to 10-2 team? Now that you made it this far to the end of the video, drop something down in the comment section below. Do you believe that Florida State should have made the playoffs? And if not, do you believe the committee got it right? And before you head out, remember to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. B. Kelly out.